This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
I did have an opportunity to speak a bit to this last meeting, so I won't prolong and do a long discussion here. But for those who are watching, just as a reminder that the motion, again with regard to SDTC, the Green Slush Fund, was as follows, that we all agreed to deal with today. Given the Auditor General's audit of Sustainable Development and Technology Canada, and given the government-appointed board members approved A, $59 million towards 10 ineligible projects, B, $76 million towards 90 projects in which board members had conflicts of interest and violated internal conflict of interest policies, and in violation of the Canada Foundation for Sustainable Technologies Act. C, $259 million towards 96 projects where board members held conflicts of interest, and D, $58 million towards projects without ensuring contribution agreement terms were met. The committee therefore expresses extreme concern with the blatant disregard of taxpayer funds, and therefore calls on the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry to recoup these funds for Canadian taxpayers within 100 days following the adoption of this motion, and that the committee report this matter to the House. We have had, and we will have more meetings on it, but we have had both the Ethics Committee report and the Auditor General's report. These numbers are straight from the Auditor General's report. They're not some sort of extensive research by my team and my office or myself. Those numbers are actually even worse.
What we're doing here is not scrutinizing the legitimate businesses that take advantage of this program, that are able to hire more employees, that are able to scale up their businesses to get to where we need to go. So, again, I advise our members on this committee to act with caution. This is a balance here that we need to make sure we maintain. 100% scrutiny is important. 100% wrongdoing should be punished. But collateral damage of small business in my country is not acceptable to me at all. And I think that we need to be a little bit more mindful in how we're conducting this. These businesses have already lived in a lot of difficulty following the freezing of funds, as I mentioned earlier. So let's please be mindful of what exactly we're doing here. So I would propose the amendment, Chair, as I've talked about, the two specific changes that I'd like to make to this motion. First of all is to strike the name of Minister of Innovation and to replace it with the Government of Canada. The Minister of Innovation is likely not the only participant, as I said, in the process, in this type of process. So broadening it to the Government of Canada ensures that we're including all players and can hold the broader government, including the minister, to account here. It's a small tweak, and it remains true to what Mr. Perkins is trying to attend with this motion. And then the second amendment, within the same second change that I would make to the motion, would be to remove the sentence within 100 days following the adoption of this motion. And I will park my comments there, Chair, with taking reservation to be at the bottom of the list should need be. Thank you.
All right. So we have a amendment to the motion to change Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry to Government of Canada, and then to strike within 100 days following the adoption of this motion. As is my custom, I'll turn to Mr. Perkins if he has any comments to make about the double amendment to his motion.
I guess I'd say I would be open to the Minister of Innovation Government if it was Minister of Innovation and Government of Canada more. And I really think the 100 days is important to get this process going. This fund has been frozen for a while. The Auditor General has produced a number and a list of companies where there's funds. The Auditor General has produced a list of how much money was given to them. So that process can begin. If there are more that come up through the continued examination of this or the additional, hopefully, review by the Auditor General, then those can be added to the list at the time. But there's no reason not to start. And I appreciate the comments of MP Khalid in terms of the impacts on the companies and working through that. But I think having it open-ended means that it'll probably never get done. And there needs to be a bit of an urgency to it in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Yes, Ms. Khalid.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to just put on the record, like what the actual impact is. So I do want to cite a company that we're dealing with here. So this was quoted in the news, and I will quote it here. QEA Tech was planning an ambitious international ramp-up of its energy efficiency technology last October when basically this whole controversy pulled its legs out from under it. To that point, the Markham, Ontario-based company, which uses drones to identify points of energy loss from high-rise buildings, had every reason to believe it was in line for $10 million from the federal agency, the Sustainable Development Technology Canada. That funding was key to a $25 million scale-up project involving 500 buildings in Canada and internationally, partly because it was validation for property companies with which QEA planned to partner, as well as for other investors. And then amid these allegations, primarily involving conflict of interest and human rights, human resources processes, as well as some funding decisions that exceeded its mandate that had nothing to do with QEA, SDTC abruptly had its funding powers suspended by the government.
Thank you, Ms. Khalid. Mr. Perkins, you signaled you'd like the floor. It's yours.
Thank you. Just a couple of responses come to mind with MP Khalid's intervention. First, just on a couple factual things. This committee's only had a couple of meetings on SDTC and the Green Slush Fund. Most of the meetings actually have been held in the Industry Committee and most of the witnesses that have been held there. So just to be clear, because I know some of the stuff can get confusing about which committee has dealt with what. And while it was an interesting reported story about that particular company, I've been through the Auditor General's list. That company's not on the list. That company, you're confusing that company with those who have gotten money against the rules of the program. That company was not one of them. That company has been caught up in the minister's freezing of the funds and applied for new funds and hasn't been able to get it since it's frozen because of the Liberal corruption in this fund. Minister Champagne had the responsibility. $1 billion given to him to be put into this fund, and he ignored it. He didn't ask a question. In fact, he stood on stages with Annette Basharian giving out these monies to these companies. I can show you the pictures. He's very proud of them. They're all over his Twitter feed. That he went and said, "Isn't this great? I'm giving away your money in the Green Slush Fund with the chair who had conflicts of interest in situations that were likely all either against parliamentary appropriation rules for the money or against the conflict of interest guidelines." But that's okay. That's okay for this minister. But he wants to blame everyone else, or at least this member of parliament wants to blame everyone else in her cabinet and not this minister. He needs to be held accountable for the fact that he didn't do it. And that's the least that we can do, is to ask him to finally stand up and agree with his deputy minister, his own deputy minister, that these funds should be paid back. He has not said it once, so we need to order him to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Khalid, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I thank the member for his outrage, however that may be. I want to clarify that when I was talking about with my First Amendment with respect to striking the Minister of Innovation and replacing it with the Government of Canada, it is not to go willy-nilly all over. It is specifically in the context of this motion with how do we get to what this motion is asking for. And what I'm trying to say is, based on my experience, based on what we've heard in testimony, it is not one department that is responsible here in terms of recuperating the funds. It is, practically speaking, better for this committee to expand it to say, let's make this process easier. Let's not get wound down on going after a single minister, as clearly members spend a lot of time on that minister's Twitter feed, which I'm sure they can find better things to do with their time, quite frankly, because the minister gets around so much everywhere. So I, again, happy to receive any comments from colleagues, but I really think that these two amendments that this one amendment with 2 points propose a very reasonable way for us to move forward on this motion. And as I said to Mr. Perkins, I really appreciate the intent of what this motion is, and I'm hoping, on his gentleman's honor, that this is not another clickbait type scenario where where industry ultimately gets punished collaterally for the actions of a very few. Thanks, Chair.
We'll now move to a vote. Voting yes will strike Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry and replace it with Government of Canada, as well as remove within 100 days following the adoption of this motion. Voting no will maintain the motion as it was tabled by Mr. Perkins. Clerk, please call the roll call.
Ms. Bradford.
Oui.
Ms. Khalid.
Yes.
Ms. Hefner.
En faveur.
Mr. Weiler.
Yes.
Ms. Yip.
Yes.
Mr. Perkins.
No.
Mr. Cooper.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés.
Encore une fois, vous êtes en sourdine.
Once again, you're on mute.
Mr. Desjarlais.
No.
6 yeas, 4 nays.
That was 6 yeas, 4 nays. Just very good. The amendment as proposed is passed. We now return to the motion as amended. Clerk, call the roll call on that, please. Ms. Bradford, the vote is open. You've been asked to vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear my name called. Yes.
Ms. Khalid.
Yes.
Ms. Hefner.
En faveur.
Mr. Weiler.
Yes.
Ms. Yip.
Oui.
Mr. Perkins.
Yes.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes.
Mr. Brock.
Yes.
Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés.
Oui.
Mr. Desjarlais.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
That is passed.